process. It's the next step in that process. They needed to have a public meeting and receive public input on the proposed project, whether or not to demolish and build new or to renovate the existing structure. And they're looking at the cost of doing both and going to submit that information to the state. What they're trying to do is get a memorandum of agreement with the state to either demolish or to renovate the structure and get clearance through historic. Before we can spend any federal funds, we have to get the clearance from the historic preservation in the state in order to approve the funds that we had set aside.
I think.
Brenda,
we just want to clear it up. We're going.
I got one more question on rental rehab. Do we do much advertising to kind of let the public know, landlords know that there is money out there for this in the target areas?
Yes, we have. In fact, we have some applications. We do advertisements, and we also do contacts and talk from neighborhood groups. But we have some applications. The problem with the rental rehab is the 5 applications that we have on hand, they've had difficulty getting contractors to give them to do the work. So they haven't come in and finished processing their application for that reason.
All right, because I know, look, up in my district, I know of only one that has actually taken advantage of it.
And there's others that have applied, even in your district, but they haven't completed their application because they said they're having difficulty finding a contractor to come in and do the work.
Any other comments? Any other business?
Yeah. Mr. Johnson, how are we on that poem by the Broadway Center?
I'm glad you asked me that, Mr. Smith. There's one remaining issue that we need to resolve. There's a problem with the title. We've gotten the title cleared. The gentleman who has the disputed title now was reluctant to pay some grass cutting liens that on the property. There's a dispute about who owed the liens. We've gotten that resolved. Mr. Canella's gotten approval from the Corps to go ahead and drain the pond. So as soon as the gentleman, Mr. Coleman, signs the deed, we'll be ready to get started.
Mr. Coleman has acknowledged that he owns the property. I think he's
the property, but not the liens.
Oh, okay.
So I've had to do some adjustments on those. So with that, we have it resolved.
I'm glad to hear that because that was a heated topic of discussion. I know we put the money in the budget, and I would venture to say Ms. Bright is going to shed a little light on that. It seems as if we're pretty close to getting something done on it.
Well, I was trying to find out what type of timeline are we looking at, and the reason why I say that because even though we have a protective fence around the pond, because it's open and it rains, the algae, mosquito breeding area, and summertime is coming and it's smelling. So that's why we're trying to get a timeline to see if, it'll be in 2 months or 3 months.
I don't think it'll be that. We're ready to get started now. We have all the necessary approvals and we got the title finally straight. So we should be getting started immediately.
Okay, the second part of that question is that even though it's going to be filled in, we want for reuse some type of arts or what you call it, cultural money to do some type of sculpture or something, historic sculpture on that place. So that's money that needs to come in the budget to be appropriated for that. Since we in historic preservation, we need some historic preservation.
Ms. Harris, that sounds like a test with Ms. Harris. Let me take it. Mention that to her.
Right, that's it.
Okay, can we treat that, Chuck? Okay, couldn't we get our folks to go out there and treat that pond with larvicide if we're having a problem with?
Until you get it straight.
I thought the intent was when they designed that, which obviously was a design flaw. The intent was for it to attract mosquitoes, I thought, and kill them. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It was supposed to be with the plant life, or the pumps, whatever the aeration never worked.
You have toilet stoppers in there. That's unfair, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, this meeting's adjourned.
Mr. Campbell?
Or is that the,
Those of us getting nervous, get that gavel down there.
Let me hit it for it.
I would like to call the Public Safety Zoning Committee meeting to order. President on the committee, myself, Mr. Silver, Mr. Lawson, other members of the council, the administration. Item number 1 is to hear an update on abandoned vehicles. I placed this item on the agenda. I know there's still some concern about where we are in this matter. We're concerned in various neighborhoods across the city. And at this time, I know we have been in litigation with this matter. And at this time, I would just like to refer to our city attorney for his opinion on just where we are and what we can and can't discuss in this matter at this time.
Mr. Johnson, we're still in litigation on the matter involving Mr. Fothery. Without getting into any details about the city's legal strategy, I'll just say that we almost have that case resolved. There's one sticky issue out there. I think it involves a dispute over the fee that the attorney is seeking. Without saying any numbers, I don't agree to what his demands are. I think when we get that issue resolved, then that case will be behind us.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson, for that report. And what we'll do after we finish the litigation process, we'll bring you back in committee to end this issue to further discuss where we're on with the next steps. Thank you very much. At this time, we have one individual who signed up to be heard in public safety. At this time, Mr. Lou Howard would like to come forward before public safety and talk about bad streets. At this time, we hear from Mr. Lou Howard. Approach the podium, Mr. Howard.
Lou Howard, 801 Hudson Boulevard. I was a former president of a Caton Concerned Citizen. Right now, I'm sitting out to resign because of personal reasons. But the neighborhood got with me early this week about just one of the streets that we have is just in terrible shape. That's a Boys Drive. When we put asphalt on part of a Boys Drive with the heavy traffic, with the buses and stuff like that, it's really basically a safety hazard. And what the people are saying in the neighborhood, when are we going to do something about that particular street? Of course, we got other streets in the neighborhood like Hudson need a lot of overlay, a lot of work. But what we're concerned right now about the safety, because we like to have an accident day before yesterday on that particular street because the holes in the street. And we
Coming up on this edition of Louisiana Revenues, big changes in Louisiana's tax laws. We'll take a look at what's new and how some of the changes can help keep money in your pockets. Also,
and this is where you would go to get to the LATAP link.
Tracking your company's tax records online anytime from any place. We'll show you how easy it is with the LATAP program. And We'll explain why the growing gaming business in North Louisiana has the Shreveport Regional Office working at a feverish pitch. These stories and much more are just ahead on this edition of Louisiana Revenues. I'm Cynthia Bridges, Secretary of the Louisiana Department of Revenue, and this is Louisiana Revenues. Our top story: the 2007 Louisiana legislature made quite a few significant changes to the state tax system, many of which directly affect residents who pay state income tax. Let's take a look at some of the major changes that could affect you. The deduction of federal itemized deductions that exceed the federal standard deduction is coming back. 5 years ago, this deduction was eliminated by the legislature as part of the Stelly Plan. But as Michael Pearson, Senior Policy Consultant for the Louisiana Department of Revenue, explains, there's been a change of heart.
What they did was put us back where we were in 2000.
Thank you, sir.
I got a question. Do you
Mr. Howard, excuse me, can you approach the podium?
Okay. Ms. Lawson, do you know exactly a time frame when the funding going to occur about doing something about the street right now?
We have to get with the planning department. It's a different area. And they're going to have to look into whether or not that's going to be on the list for the upcoming fiscal year.
Are you talking
So
about
we'll get
this
Mr.
year?
Branch. I don't think he's in the room. We'll talk to him and we'll get with you and try to resolve the issue.
Mr. Roosevelt, I would hope that when we get funding or whatever, I think the neighborhood probably gonna come back to the city council, gonna be asking a question, and the question was asked to me. They don't want to wait a year or 2 or 3 more years from now for this to happen. The longer this go on, the worse it's gonna get. It's not gonna get any better. She did bring someone out there to fill in the pothole. But on the corners, the asphalt is crushed in, and it is a safety hazard. A guy like to lost control of his car and run in another person's yard. So we do need to pay plenty of attention. We need to do this just as soon as possible. What we can do to make it, to make it safe for people to travel.
Okay, based on your concern and the concern of the neighborhood, I think what the administration needs to do, along with Ms. Lawson and the engineers for that respective project, is to look at it, the administration plan A, B, and C, for them to bring back a report to the council and look at the next steps that we need to take to move forward. So that's what I would recommend at this time, Mr. Howard, for the administration to review based on Ms. Lawson's recommendation, based on plan A, B, and C, and for the engineers to review it and to bring it back as soon as possible.
All right, appreciate it.
Anything else to come before public safety and zoning at this time?
We have a couple of matters the administration has asked to be considered.
Okay, Mr. Guest.
Mr. Lawson has discussed with Mr. Crutchfield and Mr. Johnson the increase in fuel costs, primarily diesel fuel expenses, as well as gasoline increases that have occurred since January. Some of these increases occurred during the budget process when the budget was being prepared. We have some information that Mr. Crutchfield wanted to make sure all councilmen were aware about. The immediate impact deals with our contract with IESI. It deals with the transportation of our municipal solid waste. But it also, as Mr. Lawson pointed out yesterday, this also impacts Mrs. Lawson's Department of Public Works, as well as both Chief Cootie and Chief Wesley's departments, because of their reliance on fuel costs. The administration, and through Mr. Lawson, has a resolution concerning fuel cost increases and confirming the city's intention to execute the agreement with IESI for municipal solid waste transfers, which does contain a fuel cost adjustment. It's the same fuel cost adjustment clause that previously was in the IESI contract. I think what brought this about was about a 25% change in diesel fuel just since January, Mr. Johnson. Yesterday, Mr. Crutchfield advised that the federal government's Department of Energy was reporting average diesel prices as of yesterday $4.07, which is the highest it's ever been. I think Mr. Crutchfield wants to address the issues so that the council members are aware of the implications both for public safety as for other considerations at this time. And Mr. Lawson does have a part of this resolution which has been passed out.
Thank you, Mr. Gist. Just as Mr. Gist said, we wanted to bring it to the attention of the council that the budget that's been submitted has some increases to account for what we suspected to be increases in fuel costs for our departments, gasoline and diesel fuel. However, as he pointed out, there's been a 25% increase in the cost of diesel fuel just in the past few months. So, you know, and we'll address that as we always do at major budget amendment, but I wanted to make everyone aware of that in advance since it appears to be rising rapidly, and also to make sure that it was clear the implications of the fuel cost adjustment in our contract, which, as Mr. Gist pointed out, also existed in the previous contract with IESI. And this diesel fuel cost increase will flow through that adjustment clause in that contract and be included in the price that we pay for disposal of our solid waste.
Mr. Crutchfield, I know that this, you know, the scenario, what happened on that, and I'm sorry that happened, but in total dollars, what kind of significance does it have?
Well, the price of $4, which is from the government survey for the Gulf Coast region, I think it's higher than that now, but the base price in the contract with IESI is $3.20, and with the price of $4, that's a 56-cent per ton increase, which amounts to about $16,000 a year.
So on the whole deal is $16,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
At the
More,
moment,
yeah.
yes, sir.
Okay.
And would go down if the price
Understand.
comes down.
Well, I appreciate your concern in reporting that to us, but the overall cost of things for doing that, that's a fairly insignificant amount.
Well, it is the contract.
That is for the annual cost adjustment, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I think based on what I've seen in this contract, it's a good buy. I think the administration's done a good job negotiating. No company with the instability of the prices of fuel now are going to have something there where they're going to set a dollar amount. It's not prudent for us to be engaged in the contract. We want to have a dollar amount adjustment in case it goes in the opposite direction. But I do feel that the $16,000 is an amount that hopefully we'll be able to work with without passing. The average citizen will not see an increase on their net bill that will be a noticeable.
That'll be attributed to this.
It's a very small per month increase per household. But I just wanted to make the council aware, since the contract that everyone looked at showed a base fuel cost of $3.20, which was the price of fuel when negotiations started, and it's just risen rapidly. So I wanted to make you aware of that.
Thank you, Mr. Crutchfield, for that report.
Mr. Johnson also, and I would think we mentioned this during the budget process, but the way the city actually purchases its own fuel requirements with Mr. Despino's office, and Mr. Despino can address the issue better than I can, his office watches the market literally every day. And when orders need to be placed for any fuel source, as I believe, Mr. Despino's office is able to look at a variety of different major producers. And his office tries to get for citizens the lowest cost fuel, whether it's diesel costs for the buses and Ms. Lawson's equipment, or whether it's fuel, gasoline, for both our fleets and the fire and police department, as well as the general fleet. They watch it as close as they can, but the administration wants to assure that people services will continue, although the administration will be very vigilant. They've asked that the council understand this, and they expect to report both in their budget amendment time and periodically as necessary, both on ISI as well as the entire impact. We don't know how much this actually will impact the entire budget, but it's the intention of the administration to advise the council. Because it's unique, it's never been this high. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. And as gas prices rise, we'll continue to look at it and see how it fluctuates, and y'all continue to form the council.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Lawson's resolution will resolve that the council of the city of Alexandria recognizes the impact increases in fuel costs have on ISI and its subcontractors that would be incurred for the transfer, transportation, disposal of our solid waste. Further recognize the fuel cost adjustment formula is necessary, and the mayor and administration are authorized to enter into the contract. Further, the mayor will periodically report on the overall impact of gasoline and diesel fuel for all city operations, recognizing the city budget will be affected, and providing further that services will continue as necessary and proper for the citizens and residents.
Go ahead.
Mr. Hobbs, then you, Mr. Fox.
I'll move for the purpose of not being redundant on his suggested resolution that I'm in support of. If you allow that motion and get a second.
Okay, we have a second. Move to second. All in favor, aye? All opposed?
Well, I think he has some.
Mr. Hobbs.
Well, no, he addressed it in the resolution. What I was wanting was a periodic look at what the city is paying for their, and how much is it costing. And
we would typically be less than the market, right? Because of tax issue.
Oh, yeah.
Tax.
But, this won't have anything to do with the policy on council use of city fuel, will it?
Yeah, you don't need any. Is that what you mean?
Any other questions at this time to come to Mr. Guest concerning this matter? Is that all you have, Mr. Guest?
Yes, sir. There were a couple of matters. Just a minute. Look, they'll be brought up in legal.
Okay, thank you. Anything else to come for public safety and zoning at this time?
Right here.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Johnson, Mr. Howard referred to at the street, and in my district, I understand that, but I'm saying to anyone that's listening, it's like also some people from the neighborhood group call about parking big trucks. We had this a long time ago about parking big trucks on the street and school buses. This came up again in that district. But following proper channels, get in touch with the chief to make sure that, like he did with Mr. Lawson, I could come here tonight and bring this up. Why, I'm talking about for the public, but it's political. It's politics time. We're running for office. And we targets. And I'm saying that it's with the big trucks and all this, people, they call in that district. I mean, we covered the ditches over there by his house and rerouted the water. Those streets been down there a long time. And we're doing the best we can. We're building new houses down there. But I'm just saying, it's, I got a big back.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith, for your opinion, your concerns. Nothing else coming forward?
Well, we, just out of curiosity, a few months ago, and I know it's been out there for discussion, where we're on the red light issue, cameras on the red light. Is there a suggestion? We're still looking at the litigation or what?
Correct.
I know it's been said. I get a call from Chuck Fowler's constituent in my constituent every week on this, and I just told him to ask where we're on it.
They provided me with a partial list of the cases that are outstanding that they're involved in as far as litigation. For some reason, Mr. Lawson, I also get anonymous emails from other municipalities which supplement some of the things that the Red Flags people have provided to me. The emails from the municipalities all involve litigation where the cities claim that they're not being paid as per their agreements, which raises, some red flags in my mind.
Absolutely.
Of course, I want the council to be aware of that. But if it's your pleasure, we could prepare a complete discussion and have it ready.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it. And I think, you know, based on the decision that we do something one way or the other, I mean, if it's to that point, because I hear pros and cons as well. You know, I'm not advocating it. I just think maybe just get it off the table. Either we're going to do it or we're not going to do it.
I'd like to recommend that when you incorporate all that information, you also factor into it what the additional cost would be for us from the standpoint of monitoring, execution, et cetera, so we can see what the bottom line looks like, who shares in that.
It's my understanding all of the startup costs would be red flex, the installation, all that stuff, process.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's.
I've heard about how much money we can make off it. I think it's a terrible justification for looking at this, and I hope, well, I know I've not heard from anybody involved in the discussion with the city, but if we're doing this for financial expediency versus safety, I have a major problem, because on the other side of the coin, there have been some concerns that there may have been some increases where there have been lights. So I'd like to get all the factors in there, whether it's a deterrent to accidents or if it's something that's going to increase the frequency.
Ms. Marshall.
Is Red Flex the only one that we're looking at?
Yes, sir.
Because I know there's a couple other companies out there that do it.
They're the only one that responded to the
There were several responses. We had several responses. I don't recall the names of the other responders, but Red Flex was the one that we selected from the RFPs that went out. They had the best rate of return and seemed to provide the best service when we evaluated those.
Can the administration just, for further discussion, maybe in 2 weeks, prepare a complete overall report based on the question that was asked and then come back in committee?
We can. I mean, we could give you a report now. We know that you're going to increase rear end accidents. At least all the studies that we've read show that, but you're going to decrease T-bone accidents, and that's typically the more dangerous accident. So people have a tendency to hesitate when they see the camera up there, and so they tend to slam on their brakes, and you're going to have lighter, less impactful rear-end collisions. And everything that you read suggests that that's going to happen, Mr. Lawson, as you pointed out. But the idea is that you decrease the T-bone accidents, which were more serious. On a philosophical basis, I've said this before, I think that the camera should only exist where a person could see basically the same thing, although they're up and a person wouldn't be there. They show only a view that people could see, that an officer could do the same thing, so that you're not cutting across any expectations of privacy. But I think it's really a policy decision that the body has to make. We can give you more information about statistics, but if you're where we're coming from, every time I read a study that says they're good, you'll find one that says they're bad. I did take it upon myself to call Joey Durrell, the mayor of Lafayette, and ask Joey what he thinks personally. And he said, I think there's been a lot of heat. There's been some bad press about it in Lafayette, if I recall. Joey said he thought it's been good. He said overall he thinks that it was needed. And, you know, there's a lot of folks that I think probably look at it in terms of privacy rights issues that are going to be very vocal about it, but I actually understand. I mean, that's kind of where I believe that. I understand that.
Has that been challenged, the privacy side yet?
It has in different ways. I'm not sure if there's a definitive decision at the U.S. Supreme Court level, but yes, all the federal circuits have had something here or there, and there's been some state court challenges. I think as long as the camera only views what anybody else of us in the public could also see, you're not going to have issues there. There are other due process concerns where it's been challenged, though, that they're not really recording enough information to prove their case. But remember, this is a civil proceeding where they fine you. It's different from if an officer tickets you. So there are safeguards there, but I think that you maybe need to take the time, and we'll present a report that can be circulated so that you just decide if this is where you want Alexandria to be. There are pros and cons. And I think it's just your collective decision to say, do we want to be a city that has cameras? You're going to have a lot of folks think that you institute cameras here and it's a slippery slope to introduction of cameras in other places. You, Mr. Lawson, have wanted cameras on buildings, but I think you're reticent about these, which I don't really get, but I'd be more concerned about them on the buildings, but it's just a decision you have to make as a policy-making body. I think you're going to get information on both sides, kind of like speed bumps, Mr. Marshall. You're going to hear things both ways. On the speed bumps, I think it's clear. I think this is up in the air.
Okay, thank you for the information. Nothing else coming for public safety and zoning. This meeting is adjourned. The next committee is personnel and insurance. Present on the committee is myself, Mr. Silva, Mr. Hobbs, administration, other members of the council. Item number 1 is to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a temporary staffing agreement with any and all temporary staffing agencies to provide temporary personnel to perform. Book item number 48. At this time, we hear from the administration. Mr. Raj, Mr. Page, administration, would like to comment on this matter?
I was going to do it, Mr. Johnson.
Okay, all right.
We have before the body today, gentlemen, the actual staffing agreement, which is a general services contract, which would allow our division heads to hire temp workers when needed. Historically, the City of Alexandria has never had a general services agreement for this type of work. The mayor asked me to put together an agreement so for compliance purposes. The agreement itself is very general in nature. It doesn't get outside the general practices of this area, and we're just asking the council to approve this so that we can have this in place for future reference.
Just one question, Mr. Johnson, is that how would this in any way, if might not any, impact what's taking place through personnel and human resources and civil service, if any at all? It might. Can you explain that, please?
The practices that are currently in place don't violate civil service regulations. Ms. Siraj has been very diligent about monitoring situations where she thinks that there could be a potential violation. Most of these positions are temporary secretarial type deals, say if someone is sick or out on vacation for a week. Siraj has been diligent about making sure that these people don't stay in these positions for any prolonged period of time, and I think she could address that matter directly if you'd like her to speak.
No, I think that answers the question. Any other questions to come concerning book item number 48? But now can we have a motion second that we accept this and recommend to the full council? Moved and second, recommended to the full council. Item number 2 is to hear a report from the administration concerning the rules for hiring convicted felons. This is an update to the council. This was discussed a few months ago and brought forth with some concerns by Councilman Lewis Marshall, who asked that this item be placed in personnel. At this time, we hear from the administration, and after the administration finishes their report, we'll hear from our other agency that's present with us today.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, the Civil Service Director, as authorized by the Civil Service Board, has, with the administration, come up with a policy. It's under Rule 7, the Director has the discretion to accept or reject an application for promotion or employment using defined measures. Several commissioners, as well as the Commission's attorney, have expressed a concern that this responsibility should be shared to protect the Director from potential liability. That was the relief that was sought when we brought that down to Civil Service to do this. There was a concern that if the Director made a recommendation and something happened, that could be a problem. I think that legally that's there would be protection there, but I understand the concern. Therefore, the director developed the attached procedure for rule number 7, section 3. The City Council and the administration asked the Commission to amend the recruitment procedure to allow qualified applicants with a criminal history a second opportunity for employment. That was the general question, and there is a policy to do that. I will make available to you and just pass it down. There's an applicant approval for employment, and what happens is on this form, it'll have the job classification, title, department, brief overview of job, duties, and responsibilities. Then it asks a series of questions. Does the position handle money? Yes or no? Does this position interact with the public? Yes or no? If yes, in what capacity? Obviously, there are some folks who may have a criminal record for a particular crime that you would have some concerns about them interacting with the public, but then you have to look at the type of interaction. If it's a very brief and it's a crime that's 10 years old, that may be treated differently than something else. So what this policy allows you to do is have objective factors go into the decision. Does this position enter the property of a citizen, yes or no? Obviously, that has a lot of ramifications depending on that answer. Then it has a space for other facts you feel are relevant to approval or disapproval of the applicant. And here, what we generally have listed is a history, and it's typically the criminal history. So what happens, Mr. Lawson, is you may have somebody that has 20 misdemeanors that are no case. Yeah. Well, 20 misdemeanors that are no case means that you were never convicted of anything. So I guess there's a tendency to look at what those misdemeanors are. If you have 20 misdemeanors where you fought with members of the public on another job, even though they were no case, someone on the committee might chalk that up to you having a good lawyer, but they may think you're not the right person to interact with the public. I'm making the point to say that it depends. If you have a crime of dishonesty, embezzlement, theft, you're not going to work for the finance department if that's what you're applying for. So all of those are here, and then there are 3 signatures. We developed this procedure where there's an approval or disapproval for the director of personnel, the Alexandria Civil Service Commission chairperson, or designee. And in a show of good faith, the chairperson, Dusty Nassif, he gives his proxy to the division head for that division. So administration has that person, and then there's a mayor's signature or designee, and so we vote. It comes to me last. If there are 2-0, one way or another, when it comes to me, it's done. If it's split, then I'll split the vote, then I'll break the tie. Otherwise, that's how it's done, and I'm going to pass it down. So each proxy vote comes that way, and people are not being excluded any longer, Mr. Marshall, simply because of a criminal history. But we do look at what the criminal history is, and each person votes. There have been 54 proxies submitted. There are a number of those that have been approved by the committee, and I think the process is working pretty well.
Well, okay, Mr. Marshall and Mr. Silver.
Reason why I'm asking this, and this is something that's been kind of at least once or twice a week, I have someone to stop me in the grocery store or wherever to ask me about the possibility of being hired, or are we still doing this where convicted felons are not being hired. I just wanted to make it clear that I think that we are headed in the right direction with this. I wouldn't want to see a sex offender in the office in there with Donna and Nancy. But however, if we short of a sanitation worker that's on the back of that wants to collect refuge, why not? If he's a mechanic working in the, so forth and so on. I'm of that persuasion that we give a person a second chance. And that's all it is to it. If we don't do it, then we're saying crime goes up and stays up if you don't give a person a second chance at life. So, Mayor, I appreciate you doing this, and we're getting this thing in.
I appreciate it. Just as an example, this has 9 felonies and 21 arrests, which resulted in convictions, and it was for a wastewater position. Does the person handle money? No. Does the position interact with the public? Yes. If so, in what capacity? Works in public buildings, streets, and so forth. Does the person enter the property of citizens? Yes. And so as you can see from there, all of that in bold is the criminal history. Now you might say, well, that ain't gonna ever make it because there's too many, but it's not necessarily true. A lot of these are all the way from 1974, 1978, so you have to look at it. But with this one, all 3 votes were no, and the reason were they were recent felonies within the last 10 years, and then you do look at this whole history and the particular things, forgery, theft, simple burglary, shoplifting, disturbing the peace, battery, possession of drugs on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 occasions. So,
I was gonna say city councilman.
so when you look at this, you know, that's one that did it. But there are split votes, Mr. Marshall. I do have to split votes. And believe it or not, the division heads tend to be more conservative than Pam or I do, which I think most people would assume the other way. But that's, you know, that's the process. So there are split votes, and I do break ties routinely. Lots of times, though, probably the majority of the cases, it's already an agreement when it gets to me.
54?
There have been 54 proxies so far.
Okay, I'd like to thank the administration.
Not 54 grants, 54 proxies have come to us. So we are reviewing applicants. That's a lot of folks.
Okay, Mr. Silver.
I think the idea is an excellent idea to hopefully rehabilitate a person, but there's something missing that I might suggest. If a person is hired and proves he or she is capable of discharging that activity, is there some provision to be made that, let's assume they're there for a period of 2 or 3 years, where that could be waived so they could go into other areas? Because there should be some recognition for having really been rehabilitated. Is there some merit to that idea?
Yes, there is, Mr. Silver. It's a good point. I just looked over at Pam, and she's nodding. I think that, in essence, that's already built into the process. Once they become an employee, it's not that you could never look at that again, because, again, if they had forgeries or crimes of dishonesty and were trying to move laterally or up to finance, that wouldn't happen. But you are 100% correct. Once they're in and they've served, if they're doing well, yes, they would be free to move about as anyone else. They would only be precluded if it was directly related, because it would be caught in the regular interview process as a potential red flag. If 20 years passes by and persons move through and handle things, and perhaps you would even overlook, I guess what Mr. Silver, if you see an 18-year-old that had one shoplift, and we're talking about a guy who's applying and he's now 28 and has had a great history, worked at other places, working for the city, I don't think that's going to be any obstacle at all under this policy to do anything for the city in any position. At least it hadn't been in the ones I've seen.
Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for their comments and the mayor for that report from the administration. And at this time, I would like to invite for a comment the Chief of Federal Probation from the Western District, State of Louisiana, Mr. Willie Leday.
I should just sit here.
Yeah,
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, it's really a pleasure to, I think my second time I appeared before you, and I kind of feel like I'm part of Alexandria here. I think what you're doing is great for the people of this great city. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking about my career of over 28 years of working in the criminal justice field and dealing with people who get out of prison who have many, many liabilities, including, and we don't charge supervision fees on the federal level, but getting out of state prison, having to pay monthly supervision fees, having to pay child support, having to feed their families, having to put a roof over their head. And these people need a job, and they need an opportunity to get back into the community and become productive citizens. And if we don't give them that opportunity, I can tell you what's going to happen. They're going to end up back in the jails, which you and I will have to pay to support them and lock them up, and the cost of incarceration. So I can tell you all of this. I would just add, and I think the mayor has, from what I've heard today, an excellent program that he's presenting to you. What we do is we look at the individual. You don't put a drug addict to work in a pharmacy. It's probably not going to work. It's not a good idea. So you have to look at the crime. There are many, many young people who have committed crimes. They're convicted felons, and that label will never be removed from their name. It's going to stay there. These people have made mistakes. I've lived in Lafayette my whole life. I see many people that I supervised 20 years ago that are now productive citizens feeding their families and doing well in the streets of Lafayette and all over this state of Louisiana. So I think we've got to give them a second chance. I would urge you, I would encourage you, you have to scrutinize who you hire. You really do. But you can hire someone that has no prior record. Just this past week in Lafayette, and I'm sure many of you have seen it in the paper, we had an employee that worked some 20 years for the city of Lafayette that embezzled some $700,000 I read in the paper. So it can't happen, but you have to have checks and balances in place, as the mayor said, making sure we're not putting people in a position that will allow them to easily commit additional crimes or jeopardize the safety of the community. So we have a responsibility, I think, to not only give people a second chance, but also hopefully have checks and balances to protect the interests of this city.
I'd like to thank you for your comments and your concerns and for being present with us today, Mr. Leday.
It's my honor and pleasure to be here.
Again, thank you so much. Is there anything else to come before this committee at this time? If not, this meeting is adjourned.
I had they have a rezoning.
It's probably fast.
8 Church Street, F1 from the developers.
I don't think it's scheduled in committee.
It's not on, sir, it's not scheduled in this committee. Did you submit your request to the zoning commission before it?
We went to the board last month.
On the consent.
They passed on that.
What street was it?
8 Church.
It's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda, Mr. Vaughn.
Sir?
It's not on the agenda.
It hasn't been brought up yet. They gave it the paper today's date and later on another day to come.
Who did you?
It's under Public Works and we haven't gotten it yet.
It didn't come before council yet. Did you?
I went to the council one time.
Oh, it had to come back to us, sir.
Is it on the consent calendar for?
I
don't know.
Today's date, I don't know.
And it's not on the agenda, and it's not on the consent
If you
calendar.
give maybe our clerk your information, she can research and see exactly what's what and respond to you.
This is what I came up on the first time. This I had to come back from.
Okay, if nothing else to come before this committee,
It's not on our agenda. It won't come up tonight.
this committee is adjourned, but sir, we'll look at your information and work with the clerk and work with you, see what we need to do to help you.
Okay, well, I was trying to say, I got the paper, but the day they come here, and next one too, I didn't understand. The last board said they will pass it and give it to this board, so I don't know.
Oh, it's 4 weeks after we get it.
Yeah, we'll research it for you, the clerk will research it for you, and we'll see what we have to do to help you, sir.
Let me ask Mr. Matthews, one time you stopped me in Administration Street and gave me a card. Everybody runs in the ditch there, those 2 times a week. They run that ditch in Control 8.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? That's
Yeah.
3 years ago.
And
We still get cards if you run that ditch every week.
Well, see, that's what I brought up to the attention of the administration about Enterprise Road, trying to straighten it out. Hey, Mayor, that's what I was talking about as far as Enterprise Road, straightening Enterprise Road. Mr. Vaughn here was, we got it, we're trying to get it, I'm trying to work to get that one and to kind of straighten it out.
Every week we got ditch by that ditch.
But we're working, I haven't forgotten about it.
You didn't forget this either. You said you wanted to, your people to have to walk through there, say jump up the road every time somebody comes.
We're working on it. We're definitely working on it, Mr. Vaughn.